But the issue is complex because of our nurture, as Dr. Sousa pointed out. Our emotional commitments and our intellectual commitments are deep-seated. But as a rational being, I would have to say, if it could be proven to me that there is no God, and that this universe is just a horde of irrationals, which of course, by my understanding of reason, that in itself is a self-contradictory statement. How could the I, the self, be shown rationally that the universe is totally irrational? How could there be advanced a rational argument that the universe is irrational? So it's a complex question, but I'd have to say, if somehow it was shown to me that my convictions were irrational, I would have to surrender my belief in God, even if right now I can't imagine a situation where that would be possible.
Yeah, well, it is a good question, and my answer is going to be actually rather similar, because I don't for a moment believe that the world is all random or chaos, and so I too, if you were to show me that the world is random and chaos, then that would certainly need a God to be sort of taking care of the chaos. But so you see how very far apart we are on that particular issue, right? But I suppose that for me, my worldview rests on the best that has been thought and shown in the history of science in all its manifestations. And if it turned out that actually I had been like that character in that what's that movie, the Truman Show, in that movie where this guy has been on a sort of, he's been on a character in a TV series, and that everything that I've learned about the way that physics works and the way that biology works and the way that psychology links to biology, and that it links to that different parts of biology link to evolutionary biology, etc. If it could be shown to me that all of this rested on an elaborate hoax, then I would have to revise my views.
Thank you. Thank you guys very much for coming tonight. For me, I do not believe in Scripture, but I also believe there's something more than just, as you were indicating, Dr. Sousa, of just our good feelings are simply chemical reactions, and all our feelings are chemical reactions. But at the same time, for you, I don't believe in the original sin and that kind of stuff. For you, do you feel there's something in between your two views? You're both men of great conviction, but is there something in between that we can believe in?
Pantheism, yeah.
Well, look, I mean, I think that actually there are lots of things that judging by tonight's discussion, there's lots of things that we believe in common. We probably have many, though not all, moral convictions with respect to how to behave to people in the normal situations of life, about the importance of children, about how we regard our responsibility to our children, about the importance of justice, etc. All of this we hold in common. Now, whether that means that we have to have a middle view on the metaphysical question, which I think is the one you raised, I think actually that is a bit of a misunderstanding, because you see, I think that when people complain about reductionism, they always say, and I'm not exempting Pastor Booth from this, because he has tended to say this too. You always say, well, we're not just particles in motion, we're not just chemistry, etc. But of course we're not just chemistry. Of course nothing is just anything that is its components. The components are the components, And when the components are put together in a certain way, they produce a certain result. Your computer is not just bits of silicon. Your computer is bits of silicon put together in an incredibly elaborate and clever way so that your computer has all kinds of capacity. We are bits of matter put together in incredibly cleverer ways than any computer, because nature has had 5 billion years to do it, and computers have only been around for 100 years. So, of course, we're much more sophisticated, but we won't always be, because the amount of evolution that's going on in technology is enormous. So we don't need to reject this idea that we are made of components.
I would agree that metaphysically, unless we're to abandon the laws of inference, laws of contradiction and excluded middle and so forth, we've got this in common. Both of our paperwork is blowing away tonight, the wind. I believe that the commonality that is here is actually ontological, that the source of unity that I have with Dr. de Sousa tonight is real. It's that we are both creatures, and we've both been made in the image of God, and that means that we can't help but talk about reality and life in terms of logic, rationality, justice, human dignity, and so on and so forth. The question is, and the problem is, and the challenge between us is, which religious worldview, his religious conviction, or my conviction, justifies and warrants those beliefs? That's the question. And so, although we have common ground, and that common ground is important, the ground is not neutral ground. I believe the source of the common ground, and again, you know, this goes back to the essence of my argument. How is it possible for two assemblages of bits of material? Now, Dr. de Sousa is advocating now some kind of epiphenomenalism. That is, that I'm bits of material, and a byproduct of the coalescing of those bits of material produces, you know, other immaterial phenomena. But that doesn't restore to us rationality or morality. Just that you've got a different byproduct to me. So the problem we have is Dr. de Sousa's worldview doesn't allow us to make proper distinctions. So we do have common ground. The common ground, I believe, is that we're creatures of God, and so we do talk about morality, dignity, justice. My contention is that my worldview allows those things, my basic assumption allows those things to exist, makes my experience of those things intelligible. I believe that Dr. de Sousa destroys the intelligibility of human experience. Nature doesn't act. He talked about nature acting. That's just a personification. He's now personifying, as the pagans did, the ancient pagans, material phenomena. He's now giving will and action and design to impersonal forces. So there is commonality, but I don't believe it's a metaphysical one. It's an ontological one, that we're both beings made by God and for God.
It said if your thesis is correct, then your whole story will be correct. With the past, we had atheists. You mentioned for a big part of your speeches. You mentioned Humes, you mentioned atheists. Was there any time in the past that later on their thesis didn't work out and they actually had to do that conversion? And what was the arguments for that? Whether it was from theist to atheist, or atheist to theist, or maybe halfway, like he said, agnostic.
Yeah, I think there's numerous notable examples of people who have made that journey from one perspective to the other. Some of them are in my church, and then some of them are famous figures in history. Particularly notable examples. One would be Augustine, who was an academic skeptic of in the ancient Greco-Roman world. and flirted with a number of sort of bizarre